Welcome to this week's first knowledge clip. This week we'll focus on communication, particularly on communication with regard to data collection and participant recruitment. In this first knowledge clip, we'll dive into the need to know information when it comes to communication materials. So at this point in the course, we assume that you have formulated your research questions, you have decided on methods, and that you have considered carefully which criteria are most important to you when it comes to sampling. In addition, I think you have all thought about ways through which you can reach your target group, and you may even have given some thought about the communication materials you could use in order to promote your project. So in that sense, you won't really learn anything new during this knowledge clip. Instead, the purpose of this knowledge clip is to provide you with some food for thought in this stage of your project. I will elaborate on these 4 questions based on my experiences and those of the other lecturers. Let's focus on your project's target group first. Now, naturally, you want to reach your target group directly, meaning either parents, children, or adolescents, or maybe others that are closely related to them. And maybe you want to include them as individuals, as dyads, as families, or as groups. They probably must meet certain criteria or have specific experiences, like being from a family of divorced parents or currently undergoing treatment for depression. In most cases, you want to include a targeted sample and you're looking for people with certain characteristics. Now, whether they represent a large or relatively small population, it always helps to think about your target group in the broadest sense, so their environment. How do they go about their daily life? Where do they spend their time? And so which locations could you target? Who are key figures in their lives? And would they be willing to help you approach potential participants? Are there maybe specific societal partners or municipalities that could benefit from your work? And would they be able to help you in your data recruitment? These are some of the questions you could reflect on in order to maximize your opportunities for participant recruitment. Now, the advantage of approaching potential participants directly is that you are in control when it comes to seeking contacts, providing information, and staying connected. The disadvantage is that it is probably very time consuming and finding participants is often more difficult than you would expect at first. Now, the advantage of a more indirect approach is that you can utilize already existing networks. The disadvantage, however, is that you rely heavily on other people and their persuasiveness. Therefore, you want to tailor your recruitment materials to your target group or groups as much as possible. And so it could be useful to make different materials for different purposes. So this is an example from my own research project. Where do I belong? For this project, I was looking for adolescents between the ages of 12 and 18, as well as either one or both of their parents, and they had to be from divorced families. Our data collection consisted of 3 waves of individual online questionnaires and a 3-week daily diary study in the first wave. Now, except for the criterion that parents had to be divorced or separated, there were no other criteria. So it didn't matter whether parents were formally married or not, whether the divorce had taken place years before or only just recently, or whether adolescents still had contact with both of their parents. So although divorce rates are consistently high in the Netherlands, still a direct approach was difficult because there's not just one place where you can find them, except for schools maybe. However, the issue with schools is that we had to get permission from schools to inform students and parents about the research project, like all students and all parents, while generally only 20% of the school's population is from a divorced family. And due to the GDPR guidelines, AVG in Dutch, schools cannot provide you with such information. And so a more targeted approach wasn't really possible. Now, there were some specific divorce-related online platforms and initiatives that existed and still exist. And so we approached them, like blogs, parenting websites. You have initiatives for divorced fathers, housing corporations for recently divorced parents. There were even initiatives for organized trips for divorced families, etc. So as you can imagine, a lot of time goes into making these connections with the people behind those initiatives. And that's important to keep in mind when thinking about your recruitment options. What else? We wanted to recruit through other ways in order to optimize sample size and heterogeneity in our sample. So for example, through snowball sampling, youth care organizations, and also legal professionals. Now, as you can see, although there were quite some options, at the same time, the opportunities were very scattered, which made it this very difficult target group to begin with. And this is another example, this time from the In Transition project. As you can see, a totally different situation in which the researchers were looking for younger and older adolescents who were about to make a school transition, along with their parents and friends. As such, their indirect target groups were pupils and students in primary, secondary, and later also tertiary education. Now, although this initially seems like a much easier target group, it can be pretty difficult to, first of all, convince schools to collaborate with them, and second of all, find parents and students who are actually willing to participate. So other ways to reach this target group was through the website scholieren.com, where students could simply sign up for the research project, and finally, of course, through snowball sampling. For example, when adolescents that initially participated as someone's friends became a target participant themselves as well. A second question that you want to ask yourself when thinking about creating your own recruitment materials is, what is your main message? A clear and concisely formulated main message can be the foundation for all your materials. Therefore, it should at least include the following basic information. First, specify eligibility criteria, preferably in one sentence. Then, what is the goal of your research and why is it important? You can think about why it is important for society or for science, but it may also help to appeal to a sense of volunteerism, like you can help others with similar experiences, or highlight the benefits of participating in your research, like what's in it for them. Then, briefly describe what participating in your study means, including how much time it takes to participate and whether they need to go somewhere. And finally, where can they find more information? Keep in mind that you must adhere to GDPR guidelines on informing participants, but that this doesn't mean that you must provide all the required information on every single one of your recruitment materials, such as your flyers. You don't want to overwhelm your potential participants with too much information. Now, once that your main message is clear, you can start with adjusting your phrasing to different types of target groups. Ideally, your message is understandable for people with diverse cultural backgrounds and educational backgrounds, but you may also want to differentiate between children, parents, and, for example, youth care professionals. And here's another example from our Where Do I Belong project. So this is the text that we used on our flyers. As you can see, it's in Dutch and in English. And I try to put all of the criteria mentioned in the first slide in one short text. So you can see the eligibility criteria in green, so adolescents and their parents from divorced families. The goal and importance, namely our focus on their sense of belonging, in yellow. The time investment and data collection method in blue. So there were 3 measurement waves of online questionnaires for which they received a small monetary compensation. And finally, a link to our website where they could find more information and register for the project. And this is an example of some of the information, so only some of the information that was on the In Transition project flyer. My apologies that it is in Dutch, but I'm showing you this example because the data collection for this project was quite intensive. They had 4 online questionnaires within 2 years, 2-week daily diary studies after every questionnaire, and they asked whether parents and friends wanted to fill out questionnaires as well. Oh, and whether adolescents were willing to give a saliva sample. So as a result, there is a lot of basic information that you want to give to your potential participants, which asks for a much more elaborate flyer, for example, with information on privacy protocols. But still, the main message stays important, and I'll show you some of the recruitment materials later in the presentation. A Third question you can ask yourself is, what type of materials can I use for my project? Nowadays, people spend a lot of time online, and online ads tend to be a lot more affordable than print advertising. So let's start there. First of all, I would advise everyone to create a website. This could simply be a university subpage. It's a great place to put all relevant information about your study, even for different readers, such as for participants and societal partners or other researchers. On your website, you can give a more detailed explanation of the goal and purpose of your study and what is expected of participants. In addition, you could include information about the research team, frequently asked questions, and a contact or registration form. Furthermore, you can think about pre-designing social media formats or even blogs and articles. So these social media formats would simply be short and visually attractive ads that are easy to share, whereas the blogs and articles can be more elaborate, such as informative pieces for your target group or even for the professional audience. Videos can be used to inform people about your project, and the plus is that they're also easy to share, for example, through WhatsApp, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and they also make your study much more personal. Finally, newsletters can be used to update participants, or maybe even other societal partners. So you can update them about your study's progress or findings, and also keep stakeholders involved. Now, in addition, you may want to print or order some print materials that you can distribute to some of the locations I mentioned earlier. So keep in mind that not everyone has access to the internet. You can use flyers and posters. These are probably most common. They're informative, visually attractive, and easy to distribute. Brochures can be used to provide participants or professionals with more detailed information about the project. I, for example, once ordered brochures to hand out during a symposium that we organized for our societal partners. Information letters, they are often ethically required. So additionally, you could draw up information letters for schools or societal partners. Then ads for newspapers or printed magazines. I do think that these often require consent from the university, but that may depend on your university. And finally, business cards. So these would be more appropriate for connecting with other researchers or to hand out um, Let me show you some of the materials that we used in our Where Do I Belong project. So this is our website in Utrecht University format. It contains all necessary information. So I don't know if you can read it, but you can see there's information for parents, for adolescents, as well as for professionals. Here you see the front of our flyers. We had separate flyers for adolescents in red and for parents in blue. On here you see the brochure that I spoke about earlier. So this is the front and back of the brochure we created to hand out during a symposium for scientific partners and societal partners. This is just a simple picture that I used on social media, for example, for on Facebook and LinkedIn, in order to draw attention to my post, which contains a brief description that I showed previously. And here's a final example from our project. As I said earlier, we tried to connect with youth and family professionals, hoping they would reach out to us and help us with data collection. We did this by writing articles for more professional audience. So this was in the magazine of NVO, de Nederlandse Vereniging voor Onderwijskundigen en Orthopedagogen. And we then use these types of articles as a basis for other articles and blog posts, etc. I will also show you some examples from the In Transition team. So here are the front and back of their flyer for primary school students. As I said, their data collection was a lot more complex, so their flyer contained much more information. And I think what's nice about their flyers is that it's still visually attractive and looks very organized. Additionally, they made similar flyers for students in secondary and tertiary education, and they put the information for schools on their website. Now, another great example from this project are the videos that they made about their research project, and they made separate videos for the different groups of students, as you can see here. In these videos, they let someone from their project explain the relevance and aims of their study, why you should participate, and in detail what participants entails, all using nice visuals. So on that note, our fourth and final question, which is how do you stand out? As I mentioned earlier, maximize your project's visibility and combine online with offline materials. But more importantly, try to create your own corporate identity, which is huisstijl in Dutch. So this includes a name, logo, and color scheme that would become instantly recognizable for your target group and will also give a sense of identity and personality to your project. If your budget allows it, I would definitely advise to hire a graphic designer to create a corporate identity that fits your study. If not, no worries, you can always try to do it yourself or ask others for help. Some final advice for when creating recruitment materials: less is more. So don't overwhelm people with large pieces of text or with too many pictures or images. This also means choosing an attractive and common font, so don't go too crazy, as it will just distract from your message. Then, make sure your materials are consistent, both visually and in terms of content. You can also try to create a hierarchy in visual design. So think about what part of your website or flyer needs to draw the reader's attention first and use it to structure your message. So rank design elements and influence the order you want readers to view them. And finally, use photography that reflects your target population. This makes your project much more relatable. You can also use other images, for example, like icons, to create a connection with the text and clarify the information presented in a layout by adding meaning and also evoking associations. And finally, some examples. Now, you have seen some of our materials before, and as you can see here, we have kind of a recognizable format, including the yellow and red color scheme, a logo, and these we can now use when creating new materials like fact sheets, PowerPoint presentations, etc. And here is an example from the GRIP project from Natasha Koper that also has a very recognizable corporate identity. Again, because of the color scheme and logo. I would say that this definitely gives your research project a more professional image. And lastly, here are some websites that some of us found useful when creating our materials. Good luck!